You are fired. Daniel Mercer didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He slid the termination papers across his glass desk like he was passing me a lunch receipt, not destroying my life. I looked around his office. No HR, no witness, just Daniel, the CFO, sitting under his framed awards while my company access blinked off on my phone. What is this? I asked. He leaned back. Unauthorized payroll adjustments, your login, your approvals. My throat tightened. Those approvals came from you. Daniel's smile disappeared. Careful, Rosita. If investigators start digging, they'll find your name attached to everything. Then he tapped the paper. Sign it, walk out quietly, and maybe you'll still work in finance again. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. I signed because my hand was shaking too badly to fight, but as security waited outside his door, I remembered the audit logs I had copied 20 minutes earlier. And one file had employee IDs that didn't belong to anyone. Security escorted me through the payroll floor with a cardboard box pressed to my ribs. People I had worked beside for 7 years suddenly became fascinated by their keyboards. My badge stopped working before I reached the elevator. Daniel stood at his office window, watching. For months he had asked me to approve payroll corrections after hours, missing vendor forms, strange contractor names, deleted audit notes that reappeared changed. Every time I questioned him, he said, "Executive authorization, Rosita, just process it." I had believed him because he was my boss. Because I needed that job. Because in 3 weeks, I was supposed to close on the first house my family had ever owned. In the parking garage, I sat in my car and opened the flash drive hidden in my makeup bag. The copied logs loaded slowly. One spreadsheet showed 6 employees receiving deposits. But I knew every payroll file in that company. Those people didn't exist. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number, voicemail. I pressed play. A man's voice said, "Ms. Alvarez, before you delete anything, we need to talk." I replayed the voicemail 3 times that night in my apartment. The man sounded calm, professional, but he never gave his name. "Did Daniel Mercer terminate you this morning?" he asked. "Call me before you speak to anyone inside the company." That last sentence made my stomach tighten. I didn't delete the files on my flash drive. But I didn't call him back either. Around midnight, messages from coworkers started flooding my phone. "I'm so sorry. What actually happened?" Then one that made my chest go cold. "People are saying you moved payroll money." I sat there staring at the screen while my career collapsed in real time. By morning, my work email was dead. My LinkedIn messages stopped overnight. A recruiter I'd spoken with earlier that week suddenly cancelled our interview without explanation. Then my coworker Mina texted me privately. "HR told management, there's an active fraud investigation tied to you." I dropped onto my couch and opened the mortgage pre-approval email I'd avoided all day. Pre-qualified pending employment verification. Pending. I closed the laptop before I could break down. Instead, I plugged in the flash drive. One spreadsheet after another filled my screen. Payroll timestamps, contractor payments, approval chains. Then I froze. Several transactions had been approved under my login, while I'd been in Arizona for my cousin's wedding. I grabbed my phone and checked the dates against my photos. There was no way I processed those approvals. Then I remembered Daniel standing over my desk a few weeks earlier. "Ignore the 2-factor alerts," he'd said casually. "It's updating the system." My pulse started hammering. He hadn't needed my approval. He needed access to my account. Near midnight, I drove back to the office parking garage. I told myself I just wanted the family photo still sitting in my desk drawer. Truthfully, I needed proof I wasn't crazy. The garage was almost empty. As I walked toward the elevators, I heard voices echoing behind one of the concrete pillars. "Daniel," and someone from legal. "She copied something," the lawyer whispered. Daniel answered immediately. "If she talks before Friday, everything falls apart." I stepped backward too quickly. My keys slipped from my hand and crashed against the concrete floor. The conversation stopped instantly. Then I heard footsteps. Slow, controlled. Daniel stepped out from the shadows with his sleeves rolled up, staring directly at me. You should have stayed gone. Daniel walked toward me slowly, like he already owned whatever happened next. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then he looked down at my keys scattered across the concrete and gave a quiet laugh. You really don't know when to stop, do you, Rosita? Before I could answer, 2 security guards came through the garage door behind him. Daniel turned instantly, his entire expression changing. There she is, he said loudly. I told you she came back. I stared at him in disbelief. One of the guards looked uncomfortable. Ms. Alvarez, you can't be on company property. Daniel pointed toward me like I was a criminal. She had access to sensitive financial systems. If she removed company files, legal needs to know immediately. Employees leaving late stopped near the elevators, watching us. I recognized almost every face. Nobody said a word. Daniel wasn't just firing me anymore. He was building a public story around me. A dangerous employee, a thief, someone unstable enough to sneak back into the building after termination. I picked up my keys slowly and looked at him. You know exactly what's in those records, I said quietly. His jaw tightened for half a second. Then the smile came back. That's the problem, he replied. The next morning, the company sent an internal email. I know because Mina forwarded it to me from her personal account. Rosita Alvarez was terminated pending review of financial misconduct involving payroll irregularities. That was it. 7 years at that company reduced to 4 sentences. Within hours, people stopped answering me. Recruiters disappeared. Even former co-workers who used to complain about Daniel every day suddenly acted like they'd never known me. By afternoon, the unknown caller contacted me again. This time I answered. Ms. Alvarez, the man said, my name is Mark Ellis, I'm with the FBI. I almost hung up immediately. But then he said Daniel Mercer's name. And my blood ran cold. Ellis explained federal investigators had been tracking suspicious wire transfers connected to offshore accounts for months. They believed company payroll funds were being redirected through fake contractor accounts. But we couldn't connect executive authorization directly to Mercer, he said. Until you were fired. I gripped the phone tighter. He fired me because you were investigating him. We think he realized the audit was getting too close. That night, I met Agent Ellis at a crowded diner off the interstate. He slid several printed transaction records across the table. Large wire transfers. Shell accounts. Fake vendors. Then he pointed to a timestamp near the bottom of the page. This transfer was approved 2 hours before your termination. I stared at it. The authorization attached to it carried my login credentials. Ellis looked me straight in the eye. Are you willing to cooperate with a federal investigation? Before I could answer, he pulled a photograph from his folder and slid it across the table. There's one problem, he said. I looked down at the picture. It showed Daniel speaking to someone inside our office building only hours earlier. Agent Ellis leaned closer. Someone inside your company warned Mercer we were coming. I stared at the photograph while my coffee went cold beside me. The man standing next to Daniel was from internal IT. Greg Lawson. The same guy who handled employee login credentials. The same guy Daniel always insisted on calling personally instead of using support tickets. Agent Ellis watched my reaction carefully. You know him. I nodded slowly. If someone helped Daniel access employee accounts, it would have been Greg. Ellis leaned back in the booth. Then Mercer may already know we contacted you. Right as he said it, my phone buzzed. 3 failed login attempts on my personal email. Then another alert from my banking app. Someone was trying to get into everything. I looked up at Ellis. He's panicking. By the next morning, things got worse. I tried accessing my old employee cloud folder through a backup sync account I'd forgotten about. Every file had been wiped remotely after my termination. Performance reports, payroll archives, audit notes. Gone, except for one encrypted backup folder sitting untouched on my flash drive. Ellis immediately brought me to a federal field office. An analyst worked beside me for nearly 2 hours trying to decrypt the files, while agents moved in and out of the room around us. Finally, the folder opened. Inside were dozens of internal records Daniel thought had disappeared. Timestamp manipulation logs, fake employee tax documents, approval chains rerouted through my credentials. Every file pushed the fraud further up the chain. Then the analyst paused on one folder labeled *compliance archive. "What's this?" he asked. I recognized the system immediately. Our compliance software automatically recorded executive calls tied to financial approvals. Daniel always complained about it. The analyst clicked the first recording. Daniel's voice filled the room. Adjust the login history after her termination. Another recording started seconds later. If Alvarez talks, pin everything on her before the auditors arrive. Nobody in the room spoke after that. The atmosphere changed instantly. Before, they suspected fraud. Now they had obstruction, retaliation, conspiracy. Agent Ellis grabbed his phone and walked into the hallway. When he came back, his expression was tighter than before. "We're moving for an arrest warrant tonight." I stood up. "Then it's over." "Not yet." He pulled up a flight manifest on the screen beside me. Daniel Mercer had just booked a one-way international flight, leaving in less than 3 hours. Ellis's phone rang. He answered, listened for a few seconds, then looked directly at me. "He knows." The FBI field office exploded into motion the second Agent Ellis got off the phone. Agents started grabbing folders, radios, jackets. Someone pulled airport maps onto a screen. Another team was already contacting TSA. And I just stood there trying to process how my life had completely collapsed in less than 3 days. Ellis handed me a bottled water. "You don't have to come." But I did. 20 minutes later, I was sitting inside a surveillance van outside the airport terminal while agents coordinated over headsets around me. Rain streaked down the windshield. Inside the terminal, Daniel Mercer moved through security, carrying a laptop bag and a passport. No checked luggage. He was really running. Ellis watched him through binoculars. Once he boards, extradition becomes a nightmare. Daniel kept checking his phone as he walked toward the gate. Even from a distance, I could see it now. He wasn't calm anymore. He looked cornered. While we waited, Ellis finally explained everything they had uncovered. For 3 years, Daniel had created ghost employees inside the payroll system, fake contractors, fake tax records, entire identities built only to receive direct deposits. Then the money was routed through shell accounts overseas. Whenever approvals were required, he used my credentials to hide executive involvement. Greg from IT helped manipulate login histories and erase authentication alerts after transactions cleared. The upcoming external audit was going to expose all of it within days. "That's why he fired you," Ellis said. "He needed a scapegoat before investigators connected the fraud to him." I stared through the rain at the terminal doors. 7 years. 7 years of overtime, weekends, skipped vacations, and loyalty. And Daniel had planned to bury me to save himself. Suddenly, agents inside the airport started moving. "Target approaching gate C12, someone said over the radio. Daniel handed his boarding pass to the gate agent. Then 3 FBI agents stepped directly into his path. Even from outside, I could see the shift in his face. First annoyance, then confidence, then confusion. One of the agents showed him identification. Daniel started talking immediately, sharp hand gestures, controlled smile. He still thought he could talk his way out. Then another agent said something that made him stop cold. The compliance recordings. I knew the exact moment they mentioned them. Daniel's expression collapsed. Passengers nearby slowed down, phones came out, people started recording. An agent turned him around and cuffed his hands behind his back right there at the gate. And then Daniel looked up. Through the terminal glass, his eyes locked onto mine sitting inside the surveillance van. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked afraid. Not angry. Not confident. Afraid. The news spread before sunrise. By morning, financial reporters were outside the company headquarters. Executives stopped answering calls. Investors demanded emergency meetings. Employees learned payroll freezes and department cuts weren't caused by budget restructuring, like management claimed. Millions had been disappearing for years. Greg Lawson accepted a plea deal within 48 hours. HR quietly withdrew every accusation against me. Then the company's board issued a public statement formally clearing my name. A week later, Mina called me crying. We knew something was wrong, she admitted, but nobody wanted to lose their job. I understood that fear better than anyone, because it almost destroyed me too. The company offered me a settlement and asked if I wanted my position back. I said no. Instead, I accepted a consulting role, helping companies detect internal fraud and compliance manipulation. 3 months later, I closed on the house I thought I'd lost forever. A small place. Nothing flashy. But it was mine. One afternoon, I walked past my old office building on the way to a meeting nearby. The same entrance where security had escorted me out, carrying a cardboard box. Daniel's nameplate was gone now. Most employees walking inside didn't even recognize me. 3 days after Daniel Mercer told me I was finished, he was the one led away in handcuffs.